So what brings you to Stockholm?
Well, I was at Burning Man, and I had a big plan to go to Burning Man this year, but right before the man burned, I got on a tiny little plane, flew to the airport, took a shower, grabbed my bag, and took off for Stockholm. I'm a unicorn hunter. Yeah. Or, as some people call me now, the mother of unicorns.
If I may, there's the shortest chapter in the book is chapter 5. If I could read it, it's do you need to be in Silicon Valley to be a great angel investor? Yes. And then chapter 6. But a few pages later, you talk about on page 38, you do talk about Sweden as like an exception to that.
It's the exception to the rule. Clearly, go ahead.
Yeah, so you mentioned that interesting things are happening here, and the unicorns we have, and so forth. Is that your perspective, that like it's Silicon Valley or Sweden or?
Well, listen, it's very clear that what I'm talking about there is to be a great angel investor. I didn't say to be a great founder. Great founders come from everywhere. In
a way, this book is your playbook. This is sort of
everything I know.
You figured out, and this is it's all in this. This book. Wasn't that like scary to put this out there? What's the motivation behind it? Because in a way, you're spilling everything here.
Right. So what we also know as angels is that most companies today do 4, 5, 6, 7 rounds of funding before their Series A. I'm not sure exactly how many they do here, but I suppose it's similar. What that means is you probably have 5 chances to invest in a company, maybe 6, if you can even get into the Series A. And by the time a company gets to a Series A, if you look at the cap table, there's probably between 20 and 100 people on it. So in other words, on average, you have 50 chances to get on that cap table at 5 unique events. And it is a popularity contest. It's a competition to see which angel can provide the most value.
There's a lot about meeting etiquette in the book. And
it's important.
And you talk about people who use iPads or just like multitaskers trying to hide, and adult people bring a notebook and stuff like that. But you also mentioned that you used to be a person who might not be the best listener and stuff like that, but that's something you learn. Could you talk a bit about that journey in a way?
Sure. I mean, if I'm on stage here, I understand that people are here to hear me speak. And I wrote a book, like this is my moment to speak and share knowledge. In the meeting with an entrepreneur, young angels and VCs think, this is my chance to tell them what to do. Well, that's not the best technique for you. The best technique is for you to ask very short questions and to listen. And I look at it like being a detective. If I'm trying to figure out if you did this crime, I want you to talk. Not me to talk. When I'm talking, I'm not getting any information. When you're talking, you two are the founders in this situation, I'm getting a lot out of it. So the way I like to ask a question, people come in and I say, oh, how are you guys doing? Well, what are you working on? What are you working on? Why now? I want to make sure that the company's in my kill zone, in my Goldilocks zone. So I've thought about when I should meet with a company, and I call it the Goldilocks zone. Not too hot, not too cold. Too cold, you have an idea. You and 6 or 7 billion people have a $1 billion idea every week. In other words, everybody on the planet has a $1 billion idea. That's that nature of that spewing mind. So I don't meet with idea people. I don't meet with business plan people. I meet with people who have a product that's in the market, or somebody who is absolutely extraordinary, doesn't have a product in market, who has a track record. That's the second case. And third, if somebody who I really respect, who I've made a lot of money with, asked me to meet with somebody as a favor or at their recommendation, I meet with them. Everything in my life is about meeting with founders and evaluating companies, or talking in a place like this, but I don't spend time on other stuff. So as you get older, you become more efficient with this stuff. You become ruthless with your time. I've become pretty ruthless with my time. But when I do choose to meet with somebody, I have a 3-hour rule. 1 hour of prep for the meeting, 1 hour for the meeting, 1 hour after the meeting to think about if I'm going to do it or not, and give some feedback in an email. In the book, I describe this 3-hour rule, where you do an hour of prep, so you come into the meeting knowing more about the person and their business and their competitors than they do. In the meeting, you spend a full hour, and I let the person talk and talk and talk. And typically what happens is we get about 30 or 40 minutes in, And I have run the dog to the point at which it's just laying on the ground. And they're like, I'm like, did I miss anything? I usually end with that. What did I miss? Is there something I should have asked that I didn't?
And what are the characteristics you look for? What makes you tick in such a meeting of a good founder?
Just look in their eyes.
Yeah. And what are the characteristics?
That's it. I just look and I try to tell.
It's like you see it?
I see it. And what I see is I know if I'll expand upon it.
So we're gut now.
We're back into the gut, right? And here's what it is. What I've learned in my gut is that nobody knows what ideas are going to work. So I've stopped trying to figure out. I know that if it's a great idea, it's probably a 1 in 100 or a 1 in 200 or 300 chance of working. Therefore, the idea that a human mind can understand a 1% chance of winning, our minds have a very hard time understanding probability. So if I said to somebody here in the audience, just a random person, give me $1,000, and if you pull the ace of spades out of the deck, I will give you $200,000. Most people would not do it. They say, I'm not giving you $1,000. I mean, there's a majority chance you win. But anybody who knows any kind of probability would say, how many times can we do it? How many times? Can we do it 1,000 times? Because I would like to take that deal 1,000 times. I'd like to do it for $1 million. So the point is, we're not very good at assessing this deal, right? So what you have to do is look and say, how meaningful is this business to the founder? How skilled is the founder? How dogged or resilient is the founder? And that you can tell. So I look for craftsmanship in the product. So when I saw Uber, when I saw Thumbtack, a lot of these companies, there were things in the product that I saw very early on that showed that the person had a deep understanding of the customer experience, a deep understanding of the market, the product, design, perhaps business models. And if I see the person at work and I know they can craft something, then that is the best thing to go on. Because if they pick if they're skilled and motivated and dogged and resilient, and they pick the wrong idea, you know what happens? They pivot. If they're stupid, they don't have skills, and they're not passionate about the idea, inevitably the same thing happens every time. It gets hard. And startups are hard 9 out of 10 days, and then the 10th day, it's arduous. Like, it's literally, there's no good days as a founder. Like, there's good hours, maybe you have a good afternoon. Like, literally, like, the moment a founder, like, sells his company in the morning, it's like, oh, that's the greatest morning ever. And then in the afternoon, they're like, fuck it, I regret it, I shouldn't have sold. Like,
such a classic.
It's never good, like, in that way. So what happens is these very weak entrepreneurs who lack skill pick a business that they think has some chance of becoming a unicorn, but they don't actually care. There's a lot of gamesmanship in trying to game the investors, right? How do I get the investors to do this? How do I trick them in a way?
And how do I get the guy to go inside?
Right, exactly. And so I can give it to you like in the order in which it will excite people. The number one thing is a company with very high growth, traction. So if you take traction and let's just say like very severe, like hockey stick traction, that company will have no problem raising money. Then if you have moderate traction, that company may or may not be able to raise money based on some other factors. And if you don't have traction, that's when it gets really hard. So it's easy to raise money for a company with great traction. It's easy for a founder who has sold a company before to another company or taken it public to raise money. Those are the easy things. Now, what else qualifies? Those are the things that are highly qualified and will have no problem. I'll tell you the things that are big no-nos that will disqualify you, and then we get to the middle. On the disqualification, if you don't care about the idea, if the idea is small, like it's a small market, it's small revenue.
You mentioned microbreweries, for instance, in your book.
Yeah, like microbreweries are great, but the chances of hitting a $10 billion or $100 billion microbrewery are zero. It's micro for a reason.
Well, you even labeled your business small, so.
Right. It's inherent. The first word is tiny. It's not even small. It's tiny. It's micro. So you want to, if you'll disqualify yourself there. You'll also disqualify yourself if there's not craftsmanship in the product. If the product does not look and feel good, if you don't have customers who love it, then you should not be trying to get money. You should be trying to get customers and focusing on making them delighted. Now, there's the big middle. And the middle is some traction. And the traction is usually inconsistent. Investors don't have a problem with inconsistent. They expect inconsistent, and they expect it to be very small. Small and inconsistent traction is traction that can be made to become a hockey stick. No traction to hockey stick, you still have to do that middle step of some traction and inconsistent traction. So when Airbnb or Uber were getting going, and these were high growth startups that really went from the beginning, they still had to figure out how to onboard drivers. They still had to figure out things like, how do we keep up, how do we increase supply? How do we get more people into the app than they did give and get? If you give somebody, if somebody downloads the Uber app with your referral code, you get $25, they get $25, right? So those kind of tricks come into play. What most founders do is they try to come up with a trick as opposed to just being candid about here's what we've learned and here's what we don't have. So intellectual honesty about the traction and understanding which investor you're talking to. Most entrepreneurs want to get the meeting so badly because they correlate the meeting with success. What they don't realize is the success is based on the traction. So with no traction, to get a meeting means nothing. That's like, I really want you to invest in my restaurant. Great. Okay, I'll come over and you can cook for me. And then you come over and they're like, here's what you were going to eat. We were going to make you this amazing steak. The salad is perfect. It's the best Caesar salad ever. Going to finish it up with a great creme brulee. And okay, great, make it. It's like, well, we don't have it, but let me tell you more about it. And so now we're in the circular discussion of like, well, when you make me the steak, great. Or when you have a dinner party and you make all the items for 10 people and they write cards about what they like about it, then we've got more. So what traction can you show? And founders should be trying to be the most memorable founder who demonstrates over time that they grow the most and they have the most skill. But people don't want to do the work. And in the book, I say over and over and then, do the work, do the work, do the work, do the work. And at one point, one of the people who read it said, when you write a book, you don't have to repeat yourself because people remember and that's not efficient. And I said, yeah, but when I'm trying to get inside somebody's head, I'm going to repeat things 5 times. And I'm going to make them say, why did Jason take the time to write it 5 times? Oh, it's important. He says over and over again, do the work, do the work, do the work. There's a lot of founders who talk such bullshit. And there's a lot of investors who talk a lot of bullshit. All that matters with investors is how much do they support their founders, how much time do they give to founders, and that's how the reputation is built. And then over time, they will either hit unicorns or they won't. You have to know who you are. I think self-awareness is very important for founders and for investors. There are some people who are introverted. That's okay. It's worked pretty well for Mark Zuckerberg. It's worked, and then other people are extroverted. Some people like to be on stage, some people don't. If you understand who you are and what you enjoy, and you lean into that, the authenticity will come across and you will be successful if you do the work. And so I'm very big on people having that self-awareness. And that's a lot of my time spent with founders is helping them become more self-aware of just what their limitations are and what their strengths are.